Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news on the local Colorado economy and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host, Chris Gorog, brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. Chris is personable and opens up with our guests on the issues we all would like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's New Cyber Frontier.
Welcome to today's episode of New Cyber Frontier. On today, I have Dan Blum, who is the principal consultant at Security Architect Partners. And Dan's also working on a book, and we're going to talk about that and the direction about that, called Rationalize Cybersecurity for the Business. So when we look at, I've had some talks with Dan about this and where he's going, and it's something that's well needed, as so much cybersecurity is about technical. And books that have written from a business standpoint, a lot of times have been non-technical people. I know Dan, a very technical-minded person, is trying to take this contrarian look at what he spent his whole life on from a point of view of the business person. Dan, welcome. Thanks for joining today.
You're welcome. Great to be here.
Yeah. So definitely excited to hear about this. But first of all, Dan, give us your background. You weren't always an author. You weren't always in cybersecurity. What's your progression that got you to where you're at?
Well, I was always an author because I started trying to write my first book when I was 12. Then I got my first typewriter then too. But any case, I started out with liberal arts education, and then I was a self-taught computer programmer, and eventually ended up in computer security. And my more recent and important jobs that are relevant to this discussion are with the Burton Group, pharma research and advisory company acquired by Gartner. And I worked at Gartner for 3 years as a distinguished analyst, VP distinguished analyst, won the Golden Quill Award. And then I went back to being an independent consultant around 2015 and started Security Architects Partners, where I work with a couple ex-Gartner consultants and analysts, and we cover topics like risk management, identity management, and really anything in the security program that plays to one of our partners' subject matter expertise areas.
Interesting. So you started thinking about writing a book at age 12? Age 12, I
did.
Yeah, at age 12, I was just working on the farm and didn't even know what technology was,
Well, I was also very fond of baseball, and I'm pleased that the Nats took the playoffs last night. And I wrote 2 books in the 90s as well. The most recent one was Understanding Microsoft Active Directory Services, and right around 2000 it came out. And that kind of book was pretty technical, but the new one, Rational Cybersecurity for the Business, as you said, it's going to be more, it is still for the security leadership audience, but it's about both technical and non-technical topics. And It's about aligning with the business. I can tell you more about it.
Yeah. So what was your thoughts were why you started writing and putting this direction and path down?
Well, I wanted to share, the knowledge I have with the world. And I also find that by writing one thing or another, because I really never stopped writing, even when I stopped writing books 19 years ago, I was still writing lots of reports for Burton Group and Gartner and my consulting clients. And I find that that's how I learn. Mm-hmm. We were talking about introverts and extroverts. I can speak, as you see, but I love to write. And that's how I learn. And also why I wanted to write on this particular subject of rational cybersecurity for the business is that it is sort of a bit of a double oxymoron, if you like, because cybersecurity, by its very definition, is not a rational definition. And the way that we're operating cybersecurity is sort of more for the technologists than for the business as matters stand. And just to go in on those points a little bit.
Hold off on that.
Definition.
Hold off on that. We're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back in a couple minutes.
Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
So welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, talking with author Dan Blum, who is in the process of writing Rational Cybersecurity for the Business. And you were talking before the break about your direction of why you thought this was needed. And it was interesting to hear that you said writing is how you learn best. That's interesting because myself, it's funny, I probably learn from teaching and from talking, even though I would classify myself as an introvert as well. And after I do this all day, I have to go home and take a breather and a hot bath, you know how that goes, and just rebuild my energy from taking some time off. But the thought process of why rational cybersecurity for the business, I think you were starting to elaborate on before, is yes, writing makes you learn it, but why do you come at cybersecurity from the business perspective? Tell us about that.
Well, the thing is that having been a consultant, independent consultant in the 90s, a consultant with the Burton Group, kind of back and forth between analyst and consultant roles, and now a consultant again, I found that so many of my technical consulting problems really had some kind of governance or corporate, political, or organizational issue at the root of the problem of why they couldn't solve it themselves, and they needed to bring in a facilitator and a subject matter expert, an arbitrator, if you will, mediator between the different groups in the company that were advocating different ways to go on whatever the issues were.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
and I'll also say that on this topic of learning when I write, it's I'm doing 100 interviews during the course of the Rational Cybersecurity for the Business project. I'm about halfway through that process. So kind of having a writing project and then talking to a lot of people works very well for me.
Okay. So what type of people are you looking and you talking to? Give us an idea of how you approach that, interviewing experts and stuff.
So the book is targeted the security leadership audience. So obviously I'm looking to interview CISOs. But I also interview business leaders as well on the other side of the fence, because the book is about how does the security leadership engage the business at the different levels, the board level, the executive level, line of business, corporate administration, IT, developer, and staff. So we're trying to engage the business and come up with the best practices for doing that. So I've primarily been trying to talk with CISOs, but also with business leaders, VP of operations, corporate board member, and then various subject matter experts that are covering something some area that I'm trying to delve deeper in.
Mm-hmm. So now do you separate, when you're putting the book together, you separated it by these areas that you're interviewing at different technical positions, or do you how do you structure what you're putting together?
Well, I don't separate it by the interviews. The interviews are sort of for deep background and getting a good understanding of the trends, quotes, examples, and so forth. The book was when I started out, of course, it was like a blank slate. I knew that I wanted to talk about this double oxymoron of rational cybersecurity for the business, and I knew that I wanted it to be on enabling the business and aligning with the business. But I had to decide, what to put on those pages. So I started by kind of looking at an interesting question, which was, what could be the Pareto principle for cybersecurity, or otherwise known as the 80-20 rule? What 20% of activities could we engage in that would get us 80% of the benefits? And my hypothesis was that a lot of those would have to do with aligning the way the cybersecurity program works with the way the business works.
Mm-hmm. So you take the approach that you're looking at cybersecurity from the aspect of a business, or are you looking at it from the aspect of a social society across multiple and industry? Are you looking at it from the aspect of employees or demographics? What's your kind of overall grouping perspective on that?
So it's target audience security leadership, and the perspective is the perspective of a security program for a singular business.
Okay.
But I try to scale the ideas and recommendations to the size of the business, the complexity, the security pressure they're under, and the maturity level that they are presently at in the appropriate parts of the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what if you break that down into what areas that you've found that are focuses? Where's it going?
Well, looking at that 80-20 rule, what 20% would get the most bang for the buck? I formulated it this way, and I ended up with 6 priorities. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I see cybersecurity as not just a technical problem, but it is also a technical problem. It is a technical problem and a business problem and a people problem. In the same sense that if you have a house, you need technology for locks and alarms and stuff to keep the house safe from intruders just walking in. But then you need the people to not accidentally subvert those security mechanisms, to turn on the alarms, to lock the locks. And then maybe you need someone checking to make sure that they are doing that, especially if you have children in the house or something like that. So people, process, and technology, it's a tried but true expression. And so trying to make sure that those controls are there at the base. But then on top of that, they have to be risk informed, because there's so many different threats that businesses face, so many different characteristics that they have, so many different assets they must protect, and so many different ways that they could choose to protect them, and different risk appetites. Has to be risk informed. So manage risk in the language of the business is my second priority. Third one, simplify and rationalize IT. Complexity is the enemy of security. If you can't manage it, you can't secure it. The fourth one.
Hold on, let's take a break here from our sponsor. We'll be right back to talk about the second half of your book and where you've gone with that. Hold on, we'll be right back after we hear from our sponsors.
Murray Security Services are your cybersecurity experts with decades of experience providing professional training services for our clients in various industries. We offer professional training and certification in areas of cybersecurity, safety, health, and environmental services at our academy. Our in-person and online training provides a collaborative environment where students can interact directly with instructors through live chats or in private classrooms. Visit murraysecurityservices.com for more information.
Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, talking to Dan Blum, author and principal consultant at Security Architect Partners, and long history in being a business analyst around cybersecurity technology industries. And we were talking about your book in progress that we'll talk about toward the end, about when we come out, when we can expect to see this, and how we can get a hold of you and stuff. But you talked about three areas that were, determining kind of a control baseline structure, managing risk in something related to business language.
The language of the business.
Yeah. So
managing risk in the language of the business.
And is that, thinking about that, is that looking at like people that have an MBA, how would they approach all the business aspects? And here's where cybersecurity aligns.
So, managing risk in the language of the business is a title of a chapter. Mm-hmm. And I picked that title because one of the key aspects of risk management is communicating mm-hmm. risk with the end users, with the developers, the IT staff, and perhaps most importantly, with the board of directors and the executives. And it's a known problem that a lot of the highly technical, introverted security managers of yesteryear now gradually being replaced by a higher profile of CISO, who is also sort of hard to hire these days. But nonetheless, it's a known problem that these board presentations tend to be too technical. So we sort of have CISOs are from Mars and board members are from Venus going on there, a bit of lost in translation. Mm-hmm. So the language of the business is about money and time. It's quantitative measures. It's about how does the security issue impact our key business drivers, our revenue, our mission, mm-hmm. and what are some of our peers doing, and what's the threat? Are we at risk? What's our program? How's it going? Mm-hmm. That's the sort of level of presentation that the board wants to hear, and management that's allocating the budget wants to hear. What are the options? How much will it cost? How much risk is it mitigating? Is it worth doing this? So and so that's the language of the business. So that's one aspect of that part of the book.
So do you have a lot of techniques in there about how to quantify the risk into dollars and cents, and maybe even algorithms or some way of doing that? Do you have come up with a lot of those?
Yeah. So I'm certified in Open FAIR, the factor analysis of information risk. Mm-hmm. And so I subscribe to that methodology. Gotcha. But that methodology is for risk analysis. The risk management program is larger than risk analysis because if you look at the ISO risk management framework, you also have communication, you have monitoring, you have treatment, and you have all these other aspects to it. Mm-hmm. So in the book, I describe not only how to communicate risk to the board, for example, but also how to manage a risk management program. And the open fair part of it, the quantitative part of it is important, and that's part of the risk analysis piece.
Interesting. And then you said right before the break that the third section was then simplifying this, and give pointers. What do you kind of cover in how to make this rational and simplified?
Right. So there, it's a little bit of a challenge because a lot of organizations have a lot of technical depth. They have a lot of silos. Maybe they've been created by acquisition and so forth. Maybe they're just suffering from the frequent IT change, which is like clothing fashions or something like that, where you're always getting new technologies and styles coming in. And they have, in some cases, we see a lot of IT departments being like curators of an IT museum. Bring in cloud computing on top of that, and multi-cloud management is not that easy. Mm-hmm. So it's a big challenge for the security leadership to have to secure an IT environment that they can't define or control. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, companies don't have a clear IT strategy that they actually follow. Now, there was a movie that you may have seen about, I think it was about Afghanistan or something like that. It was called Wag the Dog. Because security is like the tail and IT or the businesses are the dog. So you can't wag the dog, but you can certainly influence the business and influence the IT department. And so the book is about strategies for security leaders to listen to the business, listen to IT, figure out what they're trying to do, where they have pain, and how they can help fix that pain, and help them get a strategy that you can follow, so that even if the environment is very complex, you can at least prioritize on what the future is designed to look like.
Interesting. So,
And
yeah, go on. You had like three other portions you said you were working on as kind of rounding up the completion of this project.
Sure. And on the simplify and rationalize part, there's also tried and true models like DevSecOps and Disciplined Agile and security service catalogs. So I talk about that there. But on some of the other priorities that security leaders should have, we have manage and control access without creating a drag on the business. And we also have institute resilient detection, response, and recovery programs. So those are two of the other areas that are prioritized there, because I felt like they kind of tend to be in that 20%. That's going to give you 80% of the effectiveness. And then the second one that I was trying to remember was have an effective security culture and governance program.
Yeah, the compliance and how to identify where you have to be. And so do you think that when you're looking at governance, do you think that targeting best practices in lieu of just going after compliance and is the best approach? What's your thoughts on how to structure that? Should we hit ahead of the target or hit the target?
Well, you have to. You really have to do a bit of both, I think. But what I'm really focusing on with security culture and governance is how you can get the business on your side as a security leader, or more exactly, align yourself with the business so that you're on their side. One of my interviewees had a great quote, which was to say that cars have brakes so they can go faster. A lot of companies now are becoming digital businesses, and IT is core to the way they operate. You have banks that are kind of IT shops that happen to be in the financial services industry, for example. So they have to get IT right. They have to take risks. They have to comply with the regulations. But just following the best practices, as you were suggesting, following some checklist is not going to get you there, especially if you're a business service like a cloud computing provider and your customers are in many different industries. You cannot comply with the chapter and verse of every single regulation they have. You need to figure out which pieces of that apply to you and make sure the contract is reflecting that, and that your actual security program enables them to comply. But it's a shared responsibility model. They have to do their bit and you do your bit. And this is the sort of the new cloud model. And I try to factor that into a lot of the different parts of the book, because this isn't your grandfather's IT anymore.
Yeah. So what are you seeing as you're doing your research and everything that, cloud has been adopting the last couple of years? Is there a next newer direction that we're seeing that in the process of your research you're running across?
I'm not really doing that kind of research where I'm trying to anticipate where cloud will be or where the technology will be in 5 years. So no, that's probably not a big topic for me, but I am certainly expecting to see more of the ongoing trends play out, the consolidation around the major infrastructure as a service providers, the use of containers, the DevSecOps, serverless computing, and that sort of thing. I think 5G will have a big impact, but we could get into industry trends, and we'd be way off the subject matter of rational cybersecurity for the business, which is more about the people, process, and technology, so to speak.
Interested. What impact do you think 5G will have? Kind of like a Wi-Fi on the go everywhere?
Yes. It will create a much more connected environment. We will be so connected. Everything that we're doing now that is kind of stuttery will become more seamless and deeper connection.
Do you think that Wi-Fi goes away and individual hotspots in lieu of, hey, we could just globally cover most areas, most networks?
Well, that sure would be nice, but it's not my subject matter area.
Yeah. Interesting. So, yeah, just kind of anything you want to get out to our listener base that is, either coming down the road in the future, or things you do, how people get a hold of you if they need consulting or analysis reports put together. Go ahead and put that out now.
Sure. So my consulting business is called Security Architects Partners, and the website is security-architect.com. So that should be fairly easy to remember. And there's a contact form there. Also, welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. And the website describes the services that we do provide. Main areas are in identity management and risk management programs. As the book gets out there, and I have more expertise in security governance, I'd like to do more what I call management security coaching, I think, where I'm helping CISOs with the actual implementation of some of the ideas in the book.
Awesome. So, yeah, when do you expect the book to be out on the shelves? Online, probably. Shelves are kind of a thing of the past.
So I've written 9 out of the 10 chapters, and they're draft form, so I have to rewrite them. Hopefully finish that up this year and start going through the publishing process in the first quarter, and optimistically have it in the virtual ebook stores and the shelves in the first half.
All right, so look forward to that, and definitely anybody that's an author can agree with this, that reviews and just attention are key. So please, if you pick it up, leave him a review on the Amazon and whatever sites that you're going to be hosting it on, because that helps tremendously in getting the kind of the what's in the book and who's interested in it out there. But thanks a lot for joining today, Dan. It's definitely been a pleasure.
My pleasure too, Chris. Thank you.
All right, we'll look forward to your book coming out. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember, please follow and participate, as New Cyber Frontier is supporting a grassroots community effort to empower the individual in a digital age. Check it out at privacyforthepeople.org. Also, make sure to join our mailing list so we can keep you informed. If you have an idea, if you have a question you would like to hear answered, or if you just want to get involved in what we're doing, reach out to us at newcyberfrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors links, because they are the ones that really make this show possible. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.